Elizabeth DePompe with DAV, and I'm joined today by a very special guest. Retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Hal Fritz is a DAV Life member and recipient of the Medal of Honor for his actions in Vietnam on January 11th, 1969. His 27-year military career also included peacetime service in the United States, Germany, and Korea. After retiring in June 1993, Colonel Fritz dedicated his career to his fellow veterans, serving as a counselor for the Illinois Veterans Leadership Program, as Deputy Director of Programs and Services for the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs, and with the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs at the Peoria VA Outpatient Clinic. Colonel Fritz, thank you for your service, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I think it's important to be here, and that's why I said no hesitation, full speed ahead.
Great. We'd love to hear it. So with Medal of Honor Day being tomorrow, Saturday, March 25th, I want to start by asking you about the day that you earned yours. Can you tell us a bit about the events of that day?
Well, what happened is we'll start in Charlotte, and at Charlotte, that's where we'll get involved with the Citizens Honors Program, where we present awards to citizens that have done something very valorous or noteworthy. And upon the completion of that program, then they'll fly to Washington, D.C., where they'll participate in the laying of the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. And then they'll come back and they'll have a get together with the Citizens Honors people and have a dinner. And then that'll be the end of the day.
And can you talk to us about January 11th, 1969 and what happened that day?
that was a day full of challenges. On that particular day, I was the executive officer of Alpha Troop, 1st Squadron, 11th Armored Cavalry Troop, a cavalry regiment. But the platoon and the mission that we had, we were off of Highway 13, which ran between Lai Kay and Quan Loy. And Highway 13 was the main supply route up from Saigon through Lai Kay to Quan Loy in terms of supplies that were required by the troops. That included fuel for the vehicles, gasoline, fuel for the helicopters. It also included the beans and the bullets for the troops, the clothing. So that was their main supply route. That was normally a convoy of about maybe 100 trucks, sometimes 100 trucks that would go up there on a weekly basis with those supplies and come back with any returns. And our mission was alongside Highway 13, about halfway up, was to provide escort to the truck convoy at Lai Kay with one of my platoons, sent another platoon north to sweep the road, which was not asphalt, but it was a gravel dirt road about 21 meters wide. Sweep up to Quan Loy, make sure there was no ambush there. Then refuel, come back down Highway 13 and logger or get in a position off of Highway 13 as a reactionary force in case the platoon that was with the convoy or the convoy and platoon were ambushed on their way on its main supply route. So that's what was occurring. I normally would have the platoon leader take the platoon, but he had been evacuated due to wounds. And we had a new troop commander come in, Art West. So I told Art, I said, Captain, I was a first lieutenant, I'll take that platoon north because I know the route. And it shouldn't be bad at all. That way we can get the resupply route run safely. And so I jumped on board and took the platoon north, and we didn't run into any problems. Then we got to Quan Loy, refueled. And after we passed an area, a North Vietnamese company, reinforced company, moved in with the intent from Cambodia, with the intent to ambush the truck convoy. But we didn't know that because we passed the route and they moved in very quickly. So then as we refueled and started back down, I was trying to select a place to go off the road to get in a position as a reserve force, a reactionary force. And the spot I wanted to go to was one where occasionally the vehicles going up down that road would get a sniper shot from somebody with a rifle. And I figured it was probably just a VC that was got an AK-47 for Christmas and it was trying to zero it in. And maybe we could capture that little fellow and get some intel from him at the same time. So as we slowed down in that area, that happened to be the kill zone, the primary killing zone that was set up by the North Vietnamese for this ambush. So when we started slowing down, I would have pulled off the road, but in doing so, that would have compromised their position. They would have realized that we realized they were there. So they opened fire and initiated the ambush against the vehicles. I had 7 vehicles to 28 people ahead with me. And they were in a very effective crossfire because on one side of the road, they were firing directly across through our vehicles. On the other side of the road, they were in a ditch, so they were firing up at us. So they weren't effectively engaging their own forces, but they were catching us in a very effective crossfire. And as they did that, they hit the two leadership vehicles, which are designated with dual antennas, and mine and platoon sergeants. So we had the recordless rifle fire and RPG fire and machine gun fire. And so initially, when my vehicle got hit, both my gunners got killed. But I was thrown off the vehicle. I thought we hit a mine. Thrown off the vehicle and then came back to the top of the vehicle. I realized when I saw the sides and the vehicles heavily engaged that we were in an ambush situation rather than a situation. And I got back in the vehicle and both my gunners were killed. And I went to reach the radio, pork chopper microphone just pulled off my hand. So the radio, and so that was a matter of trying to get the troops together. We had vehicles that were on foot, getting to organize a defensive perimeter on the road. Of course, we were on the road, so we didn't have much to work with. So that's what I worked with, is trying to get everybody together and get the wounded taken care of. And it was just didn't give us a lot of maneuver space, and we had a lot of heavy fire coming in from both sides of the road, pulse from both sides of the road that were trying to overrun our position, and we were basically fighting off our vehicles. The vehicles were destroyed, or they were on fire, or we couldn't lower the weapon to, in fact, fire at the enemy who was right outside the road. We had one vehicle, a Vulcan, that was an experimental vehicle with us, and that particular vehicle was reduced. It was a 1mm gun, but again, it couldn't get it close enough to the ground, so it was spraying the area pretty good in terms of causing some of the envy and wonder whether or not they should be there. But so my concern was getting the word to the platoon and the proceed, because if they proceeded up Highway 13, they would run right into the ambush in the middle of it, and there would be no way they could escape and turn around. So they would be underneath this ambush site. So we were trying to get a radio call out to them. The radios were patching up, and we did get one call out to them, which stopped them. But then I couldn't, because I couldn't get calling for artillery fire, or I couldn't get aircraft to cover us radio contact. So most of what we had was hand and arm signals. But what I did, the tank platoon that we had with us in Alpha Troop at our defensive 3 had monitored the call that we were ambushed and they should stop the convoy. Rustled up their 5 tanks and run up the road to come to our rescue and get. Meanwhile, we were kind of fighting hand to hand and trying to fight off the people that were trying to get into the. We were on the road, so we didn't have a perimeter, and that was kind of a challenging situation. A lot of the 28 men, most were wounded, 2 were killed, some, and so we didn't have the freedom of a maneuver that you normally would have in a physical mounted. And as the tanks came up, they had stopped about 100 down from us to ascertain what was going on. Because keep in mind, we had no radio contact. We were trying to figure out where we were in relation to the bad guys and the good guys, even though we had the NVA amongst us that we were fighting, and we were all covered with this red dust. So from somebody that was looking at us from a distance, it was hard to tell the good guys from the one NCO that was firing a machine gun off a vehicle, and the Vulcan was going, but the rest of it. So my only choice was to go down to that lead tank, and the tank was to run down the road to it. So that's what I started doing. I told my sergeant that's the only way I can get. So I proceeded to skinny down that road as quick as my little legs would carry me. I was holding down the fort back at the ambush site. And as I got closer to the tank, there was an RPG team, rocket propelled grenade team, NVA team that had with an anti-tank rocket. And so as I looked up, the tank turned its main gun down the business end of a 90 millimeter cannon on this tank when it let loose the round. It's me and got the RPG team, but it also blew me into the bushes. So I came out my winging, and I got to the lead vehicle and pointed out where we neck into action. So this began, and then we got the tanks involved. This began to turn. We were able to then relocate the tanks to a place where they were defensive. And we were able to take over the situation, even though we were in pretty bad shape. That's how it ended up. I mean, we got the reinforcements in. We kept getting another to reinforce, and we were able to cause the enemy to draw back. Even with the amount, they lost about 160 people. They pulled back into Cambodia. So their attempt to ambush convoy was designed to be a morale factor for this NVA unit to say they were going to truck convoy, kill all the Americans, steal what they could, and move back to Cambodia. Because they didn't expect us to survive that initial 30 seconds. When you look at an ambush, the first 30 seconds or half a minute is going to make a difference between success or failure, defeat. And we were able to maintain. So that's, and then we got the troops evacuated, and I was one of the last ones to get evacuated. I collapsed.
Yeah.
So,
and how there's a little bit of a delay, so apologies if there's a long pause or if I talk over you. That day obviously lives in your memory and still very vivid. I know that you were seriously wounded during that initial ambush. Can you tell us about the injuries that you sustained and how those affected you throughout your life?
well, what we got evacuated, I got hit in the chest and I got in the back of the head. I don't think they missed many parts of me. There was a lot of bleeding, so a lot of it I finally just kind of collapsed due to blood loss. So that's how I ended up getting evacuated. But I managed to wait to evacuated before they put me on that job.
Yeah. What kept you going through? I mean, how long did this ambush ultimately last? And what kept you motivated and going through all that, especially considering that you were injured yourself?
Well, contact or initiation of the ambush was, excuse me, about 10:30, and the field police said it was pretty close to noon, and so it was. But at the same time, it was pretty intense. And then looking at that, I said, just got to keep going. I mean, you just can't stop. There were too many people that were dependent upon this on that spot to worry about myself at that point in time. So your adrenaline kicks in. It kind of takes the rest of your systems and it puts them in a tight knot. You're still able to maintain the presence of mind and the strength to continue on. I knew I couldn't leave my people there. I couldn't let them be killed by the NVA. So we had a truck convoy coming up. We couldn't get that ambush. So there was a lot going on that was instantaneous that caused me to continue.
Yeah. And so I understand you were still in the Army when you received the Medal of Honor from then President Nixon. What did that recognition mean to you?
What did it do for me?
Yeah, what did it mean to you to get that kind of recognition for your service and for that day?
Well, it's just, you know, I was absent first of all when I found out that they called me and they said he had been approved for the Medal of Honor. Brave troops out there that day that did a tremendous job in terms of valor and sacrifice. I lost two of my gunners. I had one fellow that was bayoneted pretty badly. Find out that you're going to be, recognized. You're in for the Medal of Honor. It's it's kind of a hard thing.
Yeah. So you went on to serve for 27 years. What kept you in that long?
I came back, and after that battle, and I was in several other battles, uh, I felt for me to be able to pass on out of the lessons learned, both the officers, the NCOs, and enlisted folks that would be committed to combat. I could give them something in terms of my experiences and what I did them to be able to be more effective on the battlefield and survive on the battlefield. I stayed in, and I went on to be an instructor at the infantry school at Fort Benning, Fort Knox, Kentucky, as an instructor at Fort Knox, Kentucky. And so I felt that I owe America, I owe that to America's sons and daughters to pass on the kind of the lesson hopes that it would help them in their deployments and their deal, because it's a, it's a terrible animal. It's chaos. It's walled in, and you lose friends. You've got to be able to keep a clear head because you're trying to save the lives of your buddies. You're trying to be effective on the battlefield. You're trying to defeat the enemy. Those are the things that go through your mind. So that's the reason I stayed on for 27 years with the veterans.
Can you talk a little bit about how and why you became a member of DAV?
How I did, or Mike?
Yeah, you.
Me.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I was notified by the DAV and said, well, I did, because I felt that the Disabled American Veteran Organization out there, Military Purple Heart, VFW, American Legion, AMVETS, are organizations looking out for veterans. They're trying to extend a helping hand for veterans. But the Disabled American Veteran Station seems to take the extra steps to help the veterans. To notify the veterans that they're there to help. The extra steps necessary to apply that and help the veterans that are going through some of this trauma of combat, and it's trauma of PTSD, this trauma of suicide. So the DAV is of the organizations, in my opinion, that in fact is to help the young men and women that have served and are serving. It gives them hope that when they get out of the service, there's going to be an organization that their sacrifice cares about their dedication and will stand there with a hand on their shoulder to pat them on the back and to help them find whatever they.
Well, thank you, Hal, and certainly members like you are what make DAV great and make DAV's work possible. You mentioned the trauma of combat. Can you share a little bit about how that combat impacted you and your mental health and how you overcame those challenges?
Well, it's just, when you face situations that are life and death, you see friends that that die because of that. And it has a detrimental effect on you. You just got to look at, go to fight those demons. What are you going to do so you don't abyss where you can never climb out of it? And so that's the key. And if they're to help you, whether it's, right now we're going through a terrible time with rate. We're going through a terrible time with people dealing with trauma and PTSD, or so we can't stop our efforts to look at ways of our suffering through that. In my case, I finally took the step. This just last year. Well, I'm going to go and talk to mental health. Just I always, because it was this: if you're in a leadership position, you don't want to show what you consider to be a. If you said, well, I've got some problems with trauma. Is that a weakness? I didn't want that to. I felt it would affect my leadership ability and my influence. So finally said, so I went in and talked to the mental health people and said, here's the thoughts. I lost some people and friends, and I've a lot of trauma in combat, and I'm dealing with it okay. All right, I'm going the right direction. I'm able to walk the walk and talk the talk. Sure that I'm on the proper glide path. So I talked to the mental health professionals, and finally I said, I've reached the pinnacle where I think I'm hoping I can get out there, and I think I can help people, and I think I'm ready to go. So they said, but it does. It makes it. And I had the resources available, but some of the people don't know where to go. It's a minefield. They come back and it's confused. It causes a divorce, abuse. It causes addiction, and a lot of that we can help defuse that and cut that amount down. And that's where I think the DEAV stepped out and said, hey, we know what you guys and gals go through, and we want to be able to help. And some of the things that recreational opportunities that make a person feel that, and I've been down to several of those organizations that hold hogs or are designed to help disabled veterans, and you see veterans that come in and legs, and when they leave after the event, and they talk the same thing, they feel much better about themselves. They feel much better about being able to do what they wanted to do, they could do before lost they lost their sight, or they lost their, but now we're able to do because they feel that there's a way to do it. And it's just when you see that, well, one, and we were taking a group picture for disabled. One veteran had lost both his legs and was in a wheelchair, but it was kind of off the little gravel path to where we were standing by the helicopter. And he said, disabled veterans standing here, some that were missing arms, and some that had a sight problem, and some that were no problem. And with that, he pulled himself out of that wheelchair, and he rode the terrain about 25 feet and joined the group. And I felt that there was camaraderie, there was brotherhood, there was others that had the same problem, and there's a way that if you work together, if you fight as a team, and this recreational opportunity that did part of that. So I've been to two of those. Fantastic. So I think the recreational approach is perhaps an answer, whether it be with eggs, or whether it be hog hunting for helicopters, or shooting bows and arrows from wheelchairs. Just getting out there and making an individual feel that even though as one of the individuals' motto is, it's not the disability, it's the.
Yeah, and to that point of recreation and kind of the healing power of recreation and camaraderie, we have our National Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic coming up in this next week, and there are a lot of people who can attest to that. And again, to your point, I think that camaraderie can be very healing. So thank you for sharing that. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing in Wisconsin and why you're there?
Mike Burke got hold of me, and he said, we'd like you to come here. We'd like you to be in this camp. And I was due to go because we have Medal of Honor recipient to Washington, D.C. for a Medal of Honor Day to lay the wreath at the tomb to honor some of the veterans there. And I thought about that. To me, 5 as recipients, where are our ribbons? As a message out to everyone that we see that it's important to support those in the military. It's important for us to be seen as we're just ordinary people. We're not some superhumans that landed on this pink saucer. And we're just ordinary people that come from ordinary families, and we have to make a decision. That decision, and so that's why we're here. So when Mike asked me, I called Leroy Petrie. He's an Afghanistani veteran that law and recipient to arm when he was throwing a grenade back at the enemy. And I said, Leroy, I'm not going to. I've been there. I've done that. I think there's a greater need and a greater call to Wisconsin. There's a program called Cabin Fever 3, DAV. So let's go there because we need to get out into the community. We need to get out where the grassroots people are. This is America, and we got to go. We go to the events where you wear a tuxedo, black tie, you wear a see people in fancy gowns, you splash and dash around. But I think it's more important to get out where the blue collar people are, where the real people are. I mean, and say, hey, we appreciate witnessing some prisoners today at the jail. And I said, these are proud to be veterans. They overstepped the line. They made a mistake and they're here now. You can't fix that, but look at the pride of being a veteran. So I will continue to bring the focus on the communities that are involved in helping veterans that really are patriotic and care, and they're doing it not for personal money, but for the personal satisfaction of knowing that they're supporting the veterans that protect the country. And that's why it's so important to be at these events. And I will continue to do that. I mean, I'm 79 years old, but I'm still able to walk and talk, I think. And so that's what I'm going to do. That's why I'm going to continue to do it. My wife knows. I tell you did that. You've done that since you came back from Vietnam. You've done that when you got to continue that until they probably bury you. And I said, no, they're not going to bury me. Cremate me and that'll be good enough.
I understand too that you speak to a lot of younger veterans. I know you were at the University of Wisconsin today speaking to cadets there. What kind of message do you try to get across specifically to that younger generation of service members and veterans?
Well, we had the Vietnam era, the Vietnam War situations, with the exception of an unpopular war being an unfriendly nation. They're going to face the situation where they're going to be facing ability somewhere, and they've got to be ready to face that. You can try diplomacy, and hopefully that works. But if diplomacy doesn't work, and if that doesn't work, you've got to be a force ready to go to war and win. And that's the ROTC group this morning, and that was the message I had to them. You're going to be in the leadership, a lot of people. You're going to have the lives of America's sons basically in your hand, because they're going to be in your command, and they're going to look to you, and you're going to have experience in combat, but they're going to look at you because you wear the bar or you wear the stripes. What do we do now, Lieutenant? What do we do now? They're looking for you. They're looking for your advice. They're looking for that's going to happen. That's what's going to happen with the new leadership. They're going to face the same leadership challenges in Vietnam. I mean, it's just the same type of situation, combat situation, and something that we cannot deny because it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, Hal, thank you again for your service to this country. Thank you for being here today and for your continued service to your fellow veterans. We certainly believe here that sharing your story can help and empower others, and it sounds like you are very aware of that tool and using it well. So thank you so much. We're honored as DAV. We're honored to have you in our ranks. Thank you all for tuning in. You can learn more about the excellent work DAV and our members do every day at dav.org. Thank you and have a good afternoon.